All right, listeners, buckle up because this deep dive is going to take us right to the heart of the U.S. Navy. And let me tell you, some of the stuff we found was, well, pretty shocking, to be honest.
Yeah, shocking for sure, but also incredibly revealing when you really think about the bigger picture of, well, naval logistics, readiness, all of that.
You guys wanted us to really dig into any potential vulnerabilities in the U.S. Navy, right? So we
Okay.
did. We found some fascinating articles from the military report, and they highlight a recent incident that honestly sounds like something straight out of a movie.
It does, doesn't it? It's got that kind of high seas thriller vibe, but the reality, when you dig beneath the surface,
Yeah.
is a lot more serious than any Hollywood story.
So we're talking about the USNS Bighorn, right? This Navy supply ship, its whole job is basically to keep the fleet fueled up. And it managed to run aground off the coast of Oman. I mean, how does that even happen? It's unbelievable.
Well, it's easy to get caught up in the how. I mean, it seems crazy, right?
Yeah.
But the real issue here, the thing that this incident exposes, is a potentially devastating weakness for the Navy, their fleet of tankers.
Okay, so just so everyone's on the same page, this isn't just about one grounded ship, right? This is about the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, which, by the way, is a huge deal. We're talking massive firepower, thousands of personnel, the whole 9 yards, and they're basically stranded because their floating gas station hit a bump.
That's exactly it. The Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group is like a floating city with all the complexities that come with that, and yet its effectiveness, its ability to project power, relies on a surprisingly vulnerable element, those tankers.
It's like having a championship race car. All the tech, all the bells and whistles, but then it can't even compete because, what, it doesn't have a pit crew? Or worse, not enough fuel to make it to the finish line.
A perfect analogy. And to make matters worse, this isn't some isolated incident, some fluke. The articles make it clear that the Navy's been grappling with this problem, this aging fleet of tankers, for years. Even with efforts to put new tankers on the water, like those John Lewis-class ships, it's a slow and expensive process.
And then you throw a global pandemic into the mix. The articles mention how COVID really threw a wrench in production and deployment schedules. I mean, talk about bad timing, right?
Yeah, timing is everything. And on top of that, we have to remember the closure of the Red Hill Fuel Depot in Hawaii. That threw yet another curveball at the Navy's supply lines.
The Red Hill situation was a pretty big deal, wasn't it? As I recall, it was a ticking time bomb, environmentally speaking. But how did we even get here? Why is the Navy seemingly caught in this precarious position with its fuel supply?
That's a crucial question, and the answer is multifaceted. The articles point to a perfect storm of challenges, really. Budgetary constraints have undoubtedly played a role, limiting the Navy's ability to rapidly modernize its fleet of tankers. There's also the inherent complexity of building these specialized vessels, which can't just be pulled off a production line, like, say, a cargo ship.
It's a whole different ballgame, right? I mean, refueling at sea with both vessels potentially moving sounds like a delicate operation requiring some serious skill and specialized equipment.
Yes.
Exactly. And that ties into another critical aspect highlighted in the articles. Personnel. It's not enough to simply have the ships. You need highly trained crews who can execute these complex maneuvers safely and effectively. And there are whispers that the Navy might be facing a bit of a staffing crunch when it comes to these specialized roles.
So we've got potential budget issues, the time it takes to actually build these tankers, and now a potential shortage of qualified personnel.
Mm.
It sounds like a logistical nightmare waiting to happen, especially when you factor in unforeseen events like the Red Hill closure. And let's not forget about the elephant in the room, or should I say, the shark in the water: geopolitical tensions. The articles allude to the strategic implications of this incident, particularly in a region as volatile as the Middle East. A carrier strike group with limited fuel is a sitting duck, vulnerable to adversaries who might seek to exploit such a weakness.
This is starting to feel less like a behind-the-scenes logistical hiccup and more like a potential flashpoint on the world stage. It makes you realize just how delicate the balance of power can be, right?
Absolutely. It's a stark reminder that military might extends far beyond just firepower and technology. Logistics, that often unseen and unglamorous network of support, is the very lifeblood of any military operation.
It's the difference between having a state-of-the-art toolbox and actually having the right tools at the right time to get the job done.
Precisely. And when that logistical chain breaks down, even the most sophisticated weapon systems become significantly less effective, potentially even useless.
So going back to our grounded supply ship and the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, what happens now? What are the short-term fixes, and what are the long-term solutions to prevent something like this from happening again?
Well, in the immediate future, the Navy is exploring a few options. One possibility mentioned in the articles is contracting a commercial tanker to provide a temporary fuel lifeline. However, as you can imagine, that's not as simple as it sounds.
Right, we already talked about those specialized refueling procedures. You can't just pull any old tanker off the high seas and expect it to seamlessly integrate with a Navy vessel, especially a behemoth like an aircraft carrier.
You're catching on quickly. Commercial tankers would require significant retrofitting to interface with Navy ships, not to mention the logistical hurdles of training civilian crews for such a delicate and potentially dangerous operation.
It seems like a Band-Aid solution at best. So what about the bigger picture? What needs to happen to address this systemic vulnerability within the Navy's supply chain?
The articles hint at a few potential avenues. First and foremost, there's the issue of funding. Modernizing the tanker fleet is a costly endeavor, and securing the necessary budget allocations will be crucial. Then there's the need to streamline the acquisition process, cutting down on bureaucratic red tape that can often delay the construction and deployment of new vessels. And finally, there's the human element.
Investing in training programs for those specialized roles you mentioned earlier.
Yes, exactly. Attracting and retaining skilled personnel who can operate and maintain these complex vessels is paramount to ensuring the Navy's logistical readiness in the years to come.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, fixing this is going to take, what, a whole bunch of different approaches, like throwing money at it, figuring out the whole process thing, and then making sure they've got the right people to actually man these tankers?
Right, exactly. It's a multi-pronged challenge, no doubt.
Okay, so this whole situation, this one grounded ship, it really got me thinking about, the bigger picture. I mean, if something as, I don't know, basic as fuel tankers can throw a wrench in the works for a carrier strike group, what other things we might not even think about, could really trip the Navy up in a real conflict?
Now, that's a really interesting question. And it gets to the heart of why this incident is so important. It forces us to look beyond the obvious. I mean, we tend to focus on the big-ticket items, the ships, the planes,
But there's a whole lot more to it than that, right?
absolutely. Think about it. You could have the most advanced warship in the world, but if it's missing a tiny critical part, it's useless. Or a squadron of fighter jets grounded because they don't have, well, let's just say a very specific type of battery. Sounds ridiculous, right?
It does, kind of, but I get what you're saying.
And those points of failure, they're not always the things that make headlines, right? We're talking about food supplies, for example. Even the most technologically advanced military in the world can't function if their stomachs are empty.
An army marches on its stomach or something like that, right?
Exactly. And that principle, it applies across the board. Ammunition, medical supplies, even something as seemingly insignificant as spare tires. You disrupt those supply lines, and the impact can be huge.
Wow. So this has really been eye-opening. I mean, who knew that a single grounded ship could reveal so much about national security, right?
That's the beauty of, well, of deep dives like this, right? We connect the dots, we get past the surface level, and we start to see the bigger picture.
So for our listeners out there, those who might be thinking, whoa, that was a lot, what's the one thing you really want them to take away from all of this?
Awareness. That's the key.
Right.
We live in a world that's incredibly complex, more connected than ever, and understanding those connections, even the ones we don't see, is absolutely crucial. This incident with a bighorn, it highlights logistics, yeah, but it also highlights the need to think strategically always in every aspect of our lives.
Because the truth is, whether we realize it or not, we're all connected to this massive, complicated web of systems and resources. And, well, appreciating those systems, even the parts we don't always see, is how we navigate the challenges we're facing, both as individuals and as a society, right?
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's about understanding how the world really works, recognizing where things might be fragile, and, just appreciating how interconnected everything is.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this. What's something, some resource or system that you rely on every single day that you never even think about? Something that, if it was gone, would really throw a wrench in your day, in your life. Something to think about, maybe even do your own deep dive into. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.